Hi, everyone. So I'm Sung-Hae Kim, and this is day 10 for me and my very first AMA at GitLab. I'm really excited. I see some of the questions that have submitted. We have about around 12 pre-submitted questions, and I'm also open to live questions, maybe after we go through some of the pre-submitted questions. I joined GitLab, and I actually sought out GitLab as a company that I was tracking and wanted to join, mainly because of the culture, the space. I love all things DevOps. Uh, Fun fact, a friend of mine, very good friend of mine, apparently coined the term DevOps. So I thought that was interesting. And when I told him that I was joining GitLab, he was super excited. I also, to be honest, I fell in love with your handbook. At my previous company, I was looking at things like how to do promotion management and compensation, and I was excited to see that a company had shared their practices, and so I got even more excited about GitLab. So why don't I'd like to make this as interactive as possible, but let's start with the pre-submitted questions. Clement, are you here?
Yeah, I can ask my question. So my name is Clement. I am a front-end engineering manager for the Monitor Health team. My question is, People Ops covers a wide range of topics within the company. I was wondering which topics you're most passionate about.
Yeah, it certainly does, and it keeps you busy because a lot of us in People Ops, we don't know what we're going to be encountering until the day unravels. I think the consistent thing about me, and that's also true for my academic background, I love all things to do with learning. I think especially I really like growing my own team first and leaving them in a situation where they say, hey, I really learned a lot working with you. So learning and development is truly a passion that I've had for a number of years. And on the flip side, the thing that I'm probably the least excited about is benefits administration. What are you most excited about with People Ops in terms of the support that you get, or what's most exciting for you?
I think that benefits and compensation is a very interesting topic for me. Things that I think that right now top of mind is diversity inclusion, and how we can improve that at GitLab is the one for me.
Yeah, I think there's a question around that.
Yeah, it actually goes to my next question. Can you share a time where you advocated for diversity and inclusion at previous workplaces?
Yeah. So let me share two examples, and they're kind of in some ways polar opposites. So the first, and I won't share the company name. Years ago, I worked at a company where there was a class action lawsuit that was initiated by women in the company who were passed over for senior level roles. And so they did a class action lawsuit. And then the company reacted by putting in metrics for hiring females globally, for promotion of females, and percentage of females in leadership roles. So I use that as an example. So I had to work on the metrics instead of the why it's important. And it was very reactive. On the flip side, I was part of driving an initiative around inclusion, and that had so many, and of course, diversity was part of that. And it really bled into the culture of the company. So it was one of the #1 definers of the company, and when we did employee surveys, when we marketed the company, when people joined, the top reason was culture, but the subset of that was, this is a truly inclusive environment where I feel I can speak up. I feel valued for who I am. And that goes beyond what I look like or other things like that.
That's awesome. Thanks for answering those questions.
William, do you want to ask your question?
So yeah, I'm William in product marketing. Welcome. We're very excited. I also love learning development and diversity and inclusion. All of that is very exciting. I'm curious, you've led People Ops and HR at a lot of great companies on your LinkedIn. What's the biggest change that you brought to a previous company when you took leadership? And then what was the impact of that change?
Okay. A couple of thoughts come to mind. One is around hiring, and then one is around performance management. Let me talk about the one about performance management. So traditionally, this company was used to having a performance appraisal approach that was annual, where managers spent a number of hours at the end of the year rating employees based on some criteria. And it was always a painful process. So we shifted to a iterative and feedback and learning culture where, people join companies not to be appraised. People join companies to grow in their career and learn. And so what we wanted to emphasize is, how am I growing? What new skills am I learning that are relevant to the job, but also not relevant to the job, but me as an individual? So I think that was a major shift in going from a performance managed company to a company that really truly embraces feedback and learning and iteration. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's tremendous. I'm curious, can you share just a little bit about maybe some of the specific programs or specific changes? Like, what was the delta that allowed you to implement that?
Yeah, so I think that first of all, we had to put in place a number of tools that supported that. So managers had to be trained on what feedback looks like, what good feedback is. And we had, I would say, about 12 different avenues for providing feedback. And that was measured on a monthly basis. So everything from how to conduct feedback in one-on-ones, it had to do 360s. We had a feedback platform that was anonymous, non-anonymous, manager to employee, or anyone could give feedback to anyone in the company, privately or publicly, through Slack and also the platform that we used. And the other thing that I liked is feedback was given either as praise or a tip. So it wasn't, hey, I want to get this, something's been bothering me, and it's a criticism, but it's more about taking it actionable. And so what is the tip that I want to give you? And that's more useful than, I think you did this wrong, or I need to get something off my chest. But it's more, here's a tip for you. And so it became more positive.
Yeah, that's tremendous. Thank you for sharing. I think Brendan's up next.
Great, thanks, William, and welcome. We're really excited to have you here. Thanks for doing this AMA so quickly into your tenure. I don't know if you've seen any of our AMAs before, but they really focus on the anything of the AMA. So my question is around our values, our credit values, which I'm sure you've spent time looking at, and it's kind of three questions, but it rolls up into one. Which of those are you most excited about? Which do you think is the most challenging for you personally? And from the outside looking in, which one do you think we need to focus on the most to improve and live our values as we've stated them?
Okay. It's hard to say which one I'm excited about the most, but maybe what I could say is what I think is the most unique from my perspective, and that makes me excited, and that is transparency. I think especially in people ops, which has traditionally been a function where, oh, we can't share this, everything has to be confidential. Rethinking that in my mind and saying, why do certain things have to be confidential? Maybe the practices need to be more transparent, but obviously we want to protect individual information, private information. So I think that answers two of your questions, which is I'm excited about that and the opportunity to push the envelope on what could be transparent from a people ops perspective, but it's also the most challenging. And then the third question was, which one do you think that we need to improve the most on? I think the obvious one is diversity and inclusion. And I don't know that we actually need to improve on diversity and inclusion itself, or actually starting with, what does that mean? Starting there first.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. To that point, I think Alex has a question next that'll help us dig into that more. Alex?
I do, yeah. So I'm curious if you've ever experienced a problem with like a culture of fear of speaking out, especially with diversity and inclusion, but really in general. And how could we ensure that that kind of fear does not take hold here at GitLab?
Yeah, this is I've experienced it throughout my career. I don't know if you know, but I spent more than half of my career in Asia, sitting in Singapore, Hong Kong, and Japan, but also supporting the whole Asia Pacific region. And so there are cultural aspects to fear of speaking out. And sometimes it has to do with not being confident in speaking in English. So that can be translated as fear, but sometimes it's more about confidence. But anyway, that's kind of a side topic. That's where I think inclusion is really what's important, because at the end of the day, inclusion is not about I'm also valued for what diversity or how I'm different or what unique abilities I have, but also, do I feel included? Do I feel respected? Do I feel valued? And that has to do with, can I speak my mind? And we start with psychological safety. And I really love the book, Five Dysfunctions of a Team, where the leaders have a tremendous role in ensuring that teams have psychological safety. And with psychological safety, especially upward to the manager, that's where I think it really starts with. Without the support for psychological safety, I don't think that you can get to the next level of fear of speaking out. What that looks like is, when someone speaks out, what happens? Is that person shut down? Are they listened to? Does the manager interrupt them? Or acknowledge, maybe the person needs to say, I want to let you know I'm speaking out right now. Maybe, that's something that could help. But psychological safety and leaders recognizing that everyone at the company calling it out when they don't feel like that's happening, I think is a key way to get that embedded in the company.
Awesome. And one quick follow-up. Have you ever had training of some sort for managers to learn how to be more receptive?
Yeah. And I would say not so much training, but more multiple avenues for learning. I think the most effective has been action learning, where peers get into a space where they can go through their challenges and work through how this can be addressed. Yeah, so that is one of the priorities that I think I'd like to focus on, is manager training. But also, I really like the idea of everyone at GitLab being able to do coaching as a verb versus a noun. So all of us should have feedback skills. All of us should be able to be a coach. I see that not as a job title or a role, but as a verb, coaching. And I think that that's something that we can have everyone learn.
Awesome. That's great. I definitely think that is in line with our values of transparency and, everybody being able to contribute. Right. So definitely appreciate that. So thank you.
Coach. Yeah.
Yes. So thanks. And I think Tanya, you're up.
Hey, so happy to have you join. My question sort of follows up from an answer that you gave to one of Clement's questions earlier. I'm curious what kind of metrics you would gather to capture the current state of diversity in our existing teams, what you think that they might look like in a truly diverse team, and if there's anything, you might not know off the bat, but if there's anything you can think of, like a substantial change you would make to make sure that we reach those goals.
Thanks for asking that question, because it is a difficult question and a difficult way of answering that. When I think of metrics for diversity, and I always say diversity and inclusion, so it's different. For inclusion, it would be things like people saying that they are able to speak up and able to contribute. Diversity, I really don't want to take a US approach first to metrics for diversity. I would prefer to start with something that is easy and cuts across globally, and then look country by country. You can't even say Asia Pacific. What are the metrics for Asia Pacific? The metrics for Korea are going to be very different than Australia. So then looking at what's important to the countries where we hire people. What are the diversity metrics that are important? One thing that is true globally is the gender diversity. So if I look at what are the underrepresented groups in every country, in the majority of them, you will have female plus one or two other underrepresented groups. So I'd like to start with gender, but then identify for each geography, what is the other important element for diversity that we need to measure. And we're not there yet, but we at least have the gender one. And it's not to say that the others are not important at all. They are all extremely important, but this is the one that I think is the easiest to address as a first step.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the answer. It's over to Emily.
Thanks. So there are so many great initiatives in People Ops. My question is, how do you decide which to prioritize?
Yeah, well, the good thing is we have an OKR process, so I was really happy to see that. And then we have certain events that we need to get ready for. So whenever I think about the objectives for people, it's really what does the company want to achieve? How does the people organization support that? And then other things that may not be addressed. So all of the OKRs, I believe, are aligned to the company, and then People Ops has metrics that are aligned to those, our KPIs. And then the other thing would be that I want to address is we are targeting to have an IPO, and the IPO readiness is the other thing that I would put as a priority. Now, having said that, on any given day, there may be something that is urgent and important that you have to address right away that you didn't plan for. So when that happens, you often have to drop everything and focus on that one thing.
Yeah, I appreciate those details. I think Darren's next.
Yep. Hey, welcome to the team. We're happy to have you. I'm a big fan of remote. That's an awesome element of GitLab that allows people to work where they're most comfortable. And so in that vein, I'm curious, what are your favorite places, place or places that you've traveled to, and why?
Okay, I love that question. So I think the first place I would think of is the Kingdom of Mustang. And the reason why is because it took, at the time, I don't know what it's like now, but it's a preserved Tibetan kingdom in Nepal. So it's more Tibetan than Tibet in some ways. There's a king. And you have to walk 5 days to get there. And it's through mountains, and it's also can be quite dangerous. And I had altitude illness, so I wouldn't want to do it again, but it was my favorite place because it was an accomplishment, and it was difficult. And I got to meet the king, the only king I've ever met, and spent about an hour with him. So that was really, really cool. Another place that I love is Kyoto, Japan. And it's because if you go to Kyoto, every single square foot is beautiful. Like you could actually take a picture of any square foot in the whole area of Kyoto, and that itself is a picture. And then a third place I would say is Laos. It's kind of, for those of you who've been to Thailand, it reminds me of Thailand a long time ago. It's beautiful. It's kind of a modest country, and a country that's still not developed.
That's amazing. Feel free to share any photos in the travel or remote Slack channels.
I'll share a photo of me and the King of Mustang.
Please do, please do.
I think I'm up next. Welcome. I look forward to meeting you in person, and just curious, what are some of your key priorities for the remainder of our fiscal year?
For the remainder of the fiscal year. So we've covered quite a few of them, but one is hiring, sort of getting our mind around what we need to hire, and the hiring metrics, like our time to fill, what needs to be improved, how we can improve that in all steps of the process. The second one is the diversity and inclusion. So looking at how we can increase the percentage of women in female roles. I was talking to Sid, and we want to look at maybe having 30% of leader roles be female by 2025 or earlier. Let's see, diversity, having a learning and development strategy and at least 3 kind of programs in place would be the top 3 that I'm thinking of. I know there's a lot more, but those are the top 3 that come to mind.
Sounds good. I don't know if you want to go to Gassia, or it looks like there's some more calls maybe down below, or questions rather.
Questions, okay. Arika?
Hi, yes. I had a question with regards to, kind of age and ageism. Is that kind of on your radar? And also, both in assuring that folks who are kind of skewing older are not experiencing some sort of, discrimination in terms of being hired and that sort of thing. And then also for those who may be younger or even appear younger than they are not being treated unfairly or being paid unfairly due to the perception of their actual age and experience.
Yeah, I'll be honest, it was not on my radar. And one of the things that I've noticed in comparison to my most recent company is that I think our average age is significantly higher than my previous company. So for me, that's a good thing. But yeah, I do think that it's probably something we need to look at. It's a tough one because when you're interviewing people, you don't ask their age. So it's a tricky one to say, all right, we need to increase the percentage of either elderly or younger, because it's something that you don't ask.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that, particularly with regards to hiring. But I think even in terms of folks who are already on board, there can sometimes be issues with perception of age, both in how, people appear, and then as well as how, if people are younger in certain managerial roles, what their, abilities or experiences or capabilities are. So I just think that that's something to kind of have on our radar.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that if we looked at, certainly anyone who feels it's an issue should definitely feel comfortable to come to to people ops and talk about it. The other thing is that because we have well-defined job roles, that people are truly measured on that. And so the feedback should be related to the job versus the individual perceptions that you have about the individual.
Great. That's, I think, good to hear. And I think, go ahead.
The other thing I'll say to that is, I don't know if people know, but managers do not have access to the people that report to them. They do not have access to their age.
Great. Frankly, I just think it's something that we need to have on our radar, because I think it's something that happens, and I think on an unconscious level. So I think it's something that we should kind of be mindful of.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks.
Tucker, are you there?
Yes. Hi there. Pleasure to meet you. So in a few past roles, I was a software engineer before being here, and I've worked with a lot of introverts, and in two of my previous roles, managedly kind of deployed a personality test approach to trying to boost, I guess, willingness and comfort towards internal communication. So not only making someone more comfortable with communicating with others, but also making others understand how to communicate with someone that might be unwilling to. Do you see any value in those kind of things? Have you had experience previously, or just kind of curious?
So I can nerd out on psychometrics. Like that is something that I actually study quite a bit. And so first of all, like we don't want to think of personality tests as tests, because there's no right or wrong answer. But I think that personality or communication styles and the assessment of the different communication styles can be really useful for team building, to understand each other. I think the dialogue, the caveat to that is then you could get pigeonholed into, oh, I'm an introvert. All right, we'll make sure we always do this for an introvert, or the extrovert needs to stop talking. That, oh, this is the extrovert in the room. But I think that in groups that are having lots of communication or frequent communication, it could be helpful for team building. So I haven't explored this yet, but we can look at the different tools that can be available to teams. There's a few. I will say that I don't like Myers-Briggs as much as some other ones. But yeah, let's explore that and see if we can list some tools that can be accessible to various teams.
Awesome. Thank you. I think I'm the last on the call question, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so should I go to the questions that are not, for people that are not on the call?
Yeah, continue
Yeah.
going with those questions.
Okay, so Gosia asked how you want to take care of diversity, taking into consideration. I think we already addressed this, how different it is for different parts of the world. Okay, so I think we addressed this. And so Gabrielle asked, what mistakes do you think we should be fixing first? So this is an interesting question to me because I think of mistakes truly as opportunities to learn. I haven't seen mistakes yet. So my answer would be, I don't know, because I haven't necessarily seen mistakes. I've seen things that are still being worked on, but yeah, I truly haven't seen mistakes. Okay, the next one is, Suri asked, what's your spirit animal? I don't know if everyone's familiar with spirit animal, but I think I've seen this in Native American language culture as well as in Mexico. I'd like to say my spirit animal is a tanuki, but that would be kind of cheesy. So I don't really have a spirit animal. My favorite animal, I think, is a giraffe. And I think that they're my favorite. I don't resemble a giraffe at all. I'm 5 feet. And it's because they're just like aliens. They have these long necks and they're just beautiful, graceful, sweet creatures. And the last question is, you've been in the company for a week, 10 and a half days, which means you are fully experienced in all things GitLab. What do you anticipate to be the biggest challenge you will have to tackle first? I think the biggest challenge will be, for me personally, to understand the working styles of my peers, the executive group. So I don't want to assume how they want me to work with them. So I really want to understand their working styles, but also the working styles of my team. One great feedback that someone gave me was, hey, I sensed there was a little bit of anxiety, maybe a little bit of fear, and I asked about it. And so someone said, we're just wondering if you are going to come here and change the team and bring in your own people. And that certainly is not my intention. And the analogy that I'd like to share is, let's say I'm moving in with a new roommate, either a partner or a new roommate. And that person, so I'm living in their home and they have furniture. But if that person doesn't have a sofa, I might say, hey, I've got this great sofa that I love. And then we decide, does it fit with the design of that person's home? And if it doesn't, we may decide to buy another sofa. Now, if that person loves my sofa, I'll bring that sofa, and we agree on that. So I don't have any plans to bring in anyone, but if there are gaps, I'm more than willing to refer people who I think would be good, but ultimately it's the hiring manager's decision. So, well, I don't want to go over time, and thank you so much. This was a wonderful experience for me, and thank you for all your questions.
Thank you.
Bye.